How's it going, guys? This is going to be a universal tank guide for the current and next mod of Neverwinter. Some new builds have been requested a few times, pretty much since the stat rework, but this year of Neverwinter has been a bit slow, and I figured I'd get this out now while I'm still playing occasionally. I'll try not to waffle too much and make this concise while giving the most important information needed to play a tank well. This might be a bit unorthodox how I'm going to do this guide, but I'm really not a fan of just listing off everything on my character, because that really doesn't help anyone learn how to play the game, and people get too reliant on that kind of thing. So I'll be explaining how to focus building a tank in the game that's effective. This will work with any of the three tanks, as I've played all three in Voss this mod, and I've played all three pretty much every mod back to mod 16. I'm currently playing on the fighter because it's just the most effective tank, simply. It's also, in my opinion, the easiest to play, and it just does perform the best. So that's the only reason I'm showing the guide on it. If you're building or planning on building a tank, you can follow along with this process and hopefully get somewhere with a useful character to run content on. There's three things you need to do on a tank in Neverwinter, and those are hold threat, don't die, and provide utility to the team. Since the first two are so easy right now with just the power kit and the easy stats you can build, the primary focus for effectiveness in content is the third point, group utility. So that's where we'll start on the build. All of the complexity of the game comes down to pressing your buttons really fast and stacking as many of these buffs as possible, and it's been this way for as long as anyone can remember. So we'll start from this end. For the mounts, I like using the Bat Swarm. It increases your damage by 15%, which helps with threat, especially when a lot of the DPS aren't using this. They're all using tunnel visions, which is more effective for them. But I mean, it's also a 15% debuff, and it's an outgoing damage debuff to the boss as well. So this is pretty much going to be your best option for tanks. You've always got the do I even have it on here? I don't have the Rex on here, but the Rex is the same, is another 15% when it's a mythic. The new Lion, the Eclipse Lion mount is also 15%. So really it's any of these, whichever one the healer isn't using in the group. And then if you're in a trial situation, you can obviously stack more of them. The companions, the Spine Devil does a 10% debuff as well, which this is going to be the most effective thing you can use. You need one of these in the group, really. Your other options are the Incubus or the Succubus, which has the same debuff as this, but as AoE. So you can swap in and out with that, but you can't stack them both. So it's not going to be effective, really, as effective to use the other ones. Also, the uptime on the Incubus or the Succubus power is pretty low. I think it's something like 5 seconds out of every 30 or something, whereas this is like, the Spine Devil's like 90% uptime. It's like pretty good. Don't quote me on the exact numbers, but it's effective. Your other options are the Lion or the Dritz companion. I don't have all of these companions on this character because I play all three tanks, so some of the other characters have the other companions and that sort of thing. But I have the Lion here as well, which is another buff companion. This one's also good for tanks because it has a damage resistance buff for anybody within 5 feet or 5 meters, whatever it is, of the companion. Then for group utility, you'll be looking at artifact set. The Vistani set, in my opinion, is the best set for tanks, for any tank. You get this 5% debuff, and any of the tanks can proc it. There are at-wills on the other two tanks, which can really easily proc this. On the fighter, the way that I like to proc it is with Line Breaker, which if you hit a boss with this, it procs the Visani set every time, so you can time it perfectly for when you want to use it. You can also proc it, if you don't have that up, with Earthshaker, with the daily. So sometimes I'll do that as well if I'm in a situation where I need to get that 5% debuff up for the artifact windows. Obviously, you got your artifact as well. I like using the Blast Scepter because there are many other debuffs you can use. The Venom Coated Knives, the Black Dragon, the Lantern, the Frozen Journal is a good one as well down here. The problem that I've found with a lot of these other debuffs, in Voss particularly, is when I'm casting it on the tank, the character will spin when I'm hitting one of the AoE debuffs, like the knives or the heart. No idea why this happens. It's almost like it's locking onto a character behind me, and the debuff doesn't proc on the boss. So that's just not going to fly. That's not going to be as effective. So I'm going with the Blast Scepter now, and I stick with this every time because it always hits. It's a single target debuff. The Blast Scepter hits the boss. You'll never miss with this one. The Weapon Enchant is another one. I use the Dread on the Weapon Enchant. You're going to want a Dread and a Frost in the group. They're the best debuffs. They both reduce defense on the boss. You have one on the tank, one on the healer. I like the Dread on the tank just because it does a dot as well, which can help with threat, that kind of thing. It's not a big deal, but really you just coordinate that with the healer for who uses which one. And then the Master's Weapons, which is a 2% damage buff for the team for everyone that uses them. 2% outgoing healing, 2% reduced incoming damage. This is really the best weapon set you're going to use on a support. Some of the other things for utility is I like using this new one, the Turban of the Shifting Sands. Before this, I was using the old version, the Crown of the Undead. When you use a daily power, you pull the enemies within 20 feet towards you. This is really useful for AoE situations. I just leave it on for the entire dungeon because there's no need. It's not going to be more effective for me to change little pieces of the gear and that sort of thing in the dungeon. I just have it set up for the most effective way to run. The only things I really change in the dungeon is the artifact and the companion, my summon companion, and my mount power, which these I pretty much change them all to something that stuns. Running hardcore Voss using stuns is one of the most effective things you can do. It's almost as effective as using these debuffs in the bosses. So I'll switch the mount power. I'll switch to the Lion if I'm not running with a Paladin healer, because the shield is really useful and it knocks back enemies. The companion, I like switching to the Intellect Devourer. This one has the best stun. It backs up when it casts it, and it also has a really good uptime on it. So that's the best stun companion in my opinion. And then I'll simply change this to the Envenomed Journal, because the debuffs aren't going to do as much in the mobs. The stun that it does on cast is really useful, and it helps get your daily back, so you can proc another stun with Earthshaker, which stuns all nearby enemies, and it procs the Turban of the Shifting Sands. So switching all that stuff out to stun utility in the mobs is pretty much the only things I swap out as we're running through the dungeon. That is pretty much it for the group utility. I'll just check over everything really quick. Oh, the other thing would be we run the Raptor in the group because you get the most stats out of having the Raptors. I run the Awareness Raptor. The other 4 run the Power Raptor. That's just another part of something that helps with the group. The next thing would be, back to the 3 points from the start of the video, would be going towards not dying and holding threat. Holding threat is really easy in this game now. They buffed the threat multiplier a while ago. The fighter is the best at doing it because you only need 1 power. You only need shield throw. Shield throw is the best tank ability in the game. You never lose threat using it. It can pull threat back because it has a nice magnitude and it has a good uptime. That's really all you're going to need. You have shield throw here, increased threat. Every 5 seconds I'm casting it, and it has this feat here. Generates additional threat, cooldown reduced to 6 seconds. This is really your best ability for holding threat. Other than that, everything else on the kit works. I just use these the whole way through. I don't switch these powers. Enforce threat, pulls all the mobs. Line Breaker is good for AoE, and it procs that Vistani set as well on bosses. I actually need to talk more about Enforce threat, because this is really the reason I play the fighter over anything else, is that reduced awareness of all targets by 10%. It's one of the best buffs you can use in the game. It goes beyond the cap. It doesn't matter if the DPS are at capped awareness. It still acts as if they're getting 10% more CA. Yeah, this is the best power you've got. The other tanks don't have a buff this good. The Barbarian has the 10% physical damage reduction, physical damage increase, which is the same as the Rogues, and it's the same as Commander Strike as well on the fighter, but the Rogues is the best because it has the reduced crit avoidance as well. And sorry if I get any of these mixed up, saying the wrong stat or the counter stat, but hopefully you get what I mean by it. But if you have a Rogue in the group using Wicked Reminder, that 10% reduced crit avoidance is then adding 10% more crit severity to everybody's attacks as well. It's the best one of that physical damage increase buff that you can get in the game. So you're going to want the Rogue running that. So the Barbarians doesn't matter. The Paladin has nothing. The Paladin has, I don't care if it has 2% crit or whatever. The Paladin has nothing in terms of buffs like that. So it's not even worth addressing it. The other things for threat really is this ring. This is the best threat you have on any of the tanks. You can just run in circles and you can pull threat on all of the mobs, and you can keep your team safe with that. It's pretty much all you need, honestly. When you're looking at stats onto the final point, pretty much all of your stats come from the companions. I'll actually show the stats page here. It's nothing special, but it's also, I mean, getting all these to 90% also isn't going to be anything special. It's not going to make that much of a difference. You can show it here with Dig In. The awareness is high, the crit avoidance is high, the defense is high. You really don't need much more than this. You can use some potions and stuff if you want to buff it up a little bit more, but adding any more to these is going to take away from the group utility I can provide, and I don't need any of it. You don't need any of it to complete the content. You don't need any of it to complete it fast. It's really not important to get all those 90% unless you're just going for a cool screenshot to show off, you know. Other than that, it's really not going to help much. But honestly, that's about it for the build. There are some specific armor pieces here. If you want to take screenshots of any of this, I can flick through all of them. But really, I've just focused on the most important parts. A lot of this stuff is preference as well. People are going to use different things, what they want to use. If you have any questions about any of this stuff, about why I use any of this gear, feats, powers, boons, right here. These are the companions. Pretty much all awareness. Awareness is the best defense stat. Armor break is another one. That's another debuff that I forgot to mention with the group utility. Someone's got to be running this. Reducing enemies' defense by 7.5%. It's also one of the really good buffs. Someone can run this. Someone can run dulled sensors, which is another awareness reduction. It's also a great thing to add on. Probably should have mentioned that earlier, but there's a lot of stuff to go over. And then the mounts. Nothing special. This is all just stat building. The insignias. Show all the collars. Same with all the enchants in here. It's all just Armor Enchant is preference, pretty much. I like the Elven Battle because it helps reduce the slows in Voss, getting pulled into the black hole and that kind of thing. The utility slots, these will change to Azor's next mod for the run speed, 100%. That will be the best way to go. Yeah, I'll just show all this armor. So you can just pause it if you want to look at any of it. Again, the enchants is all just stat balancing. None of it's really like a guaranteed thing that you have to run. And that's about it for the build. It might be a bit, it might seem a bit sloppy, it might seem a bit unorthodox, but honestly, I don't feel like any more information needs to be given than that, and you can see everything on here. Like usual, a lot of the stuff in this game is preference. A lot of people have different ideas about how to build characters, how to run things, but this is effective. The way that I put these characters together is effective. We get through a lot of runs of content when we're playing. We get a lot of fast runs. Everything works if you just build around those buffs, play the game well, don't worry about too much with the stats, the stat balancing, maxing out everything. There's no point in worrying about all that stuff. You may as well just play the game, get your loot, get through the content. That's about it. If you found this video useful, please hit the thumbs up button. And if you want to see more from me, you can subscribe. Leave a comment if you have any questions or have anything you want to see in another video. You can find me on Twitch and Instagram at iKokoum. And I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.